Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode with Ralph. Hope you're fine, dear lovely IELTS candidate. Today's lesson is one of the most important lessons that I've managed to prepare for you, dear lovely IELTS candidates. And today, you will learn how to avoid using basic words. All right. If you can avoid basic words, the IELTS examiner will see that your English is not basic. Right, this will improve your grade. And basic words make writing seem informal and unacademic. So if you can avoid basic words, the IELTS examiner will see your writing as formal and academic in a style, right? And it will show the IELTS examiner your ability to substitute one word or phrase for another. This skill connects your ideas and shows the examiner that you know how to actually follow coherence and cohesion in your writing. So, first of all, what we're going to do today is first, I will read a sample task 2 question, and I will provide a sample answer, which is around 6 band score, and then we'll change the words, right? And you will see how you can change these words. And at the end of this session, we'll work on some vocabularies, all right? Some synonyms that you can mostly use, widely used vocabularies in tasks 2. And I'm pretty sure that you will surely improve your band score in writing task 2. So this is our sample question. If children are overweight, their parents should be punished. To what extent do you agree? If children are overweight, their parents should be punished. All right, this is a sample introduction paragraph. Let's read together. Obesity is a very big and interesting problem. A lot of people think that being obese is bad and that being slimmer is good. Not many people think they have the answer to this problem. In this essay, I will discuss this problem and conclude that mothers and fathers should not be blamed if their sons and daughters are fat. As you can see, so many words are repeated here, like, for example, problem, right? And the style of writing is not academic. You cannot see a word that is academic or, let's say, a good word. Now, what we're going to do is to change these words, these basic words here in this paragraph, and then we'll work on the vocabulary part. All right, let's start from the beginning. Obesity is, so instead of very big and interesting problem, you can write is an extremely large, so instead of very big, you can write extremely large, and fascinating issue. Instead of problem, you can write issue, and instead of interesting, you can write fascinating, right? A lot of people, if you remember in our previous video, I told you not to write people. You should write a specific type of people you're referring to, right? So instead of a lot of people, you can write a significant number of experts. A significant number of experts. So think. Think is a very basic word. So instead of think, you can write are of the opinion. Are of the opinion that being obese is bad. Bad is not a good word. It's, let's say, basic. So instead of bad, you can write detrimental, all right? Detrimental. And that being slimmer is good. So instead of good, you can write hugely beneficial. Hugely beneficial. Now, after that, we have not many people. Again, we have people here in which we should change people. And instead of not many, you can write a tiny number of. A tiny number of nutritionists and medical professionals. So instead of people, you can write a specific group of people, right? Think. Again, we have the verb think here. Instead of think, you can write are convinced. Are convinced, all right? That they have the answer to this problem. Instead of problem, you can write dilemma. Dilemma. All right. In this essay, I will discuss this problem. Again, we have the word problem, which is repeated here for the 3rd time. So instead of problem, you can write this matter, right? This matter. and conclude that mothers and fathers should not be blamed if their sons and daughters are fat. Instead of fat, you can write overweight. So, as you can see, we can change our paragraph into a more academic style, and that will definitely improve your band score. Now here, I'm going to teach you some words, some synonyms that you can use instead of very basic words. Let's start with the word good. So good is a word that I've seen so many IELTS candidates use in their writing and also in their speaking part. So instead of good, there are a bunch of other, let's say, alternatives that you can use. The first one is tremendous. Tremendous. For example, students who choose to take a gap year have a tremendous opportunity to travel. So instead of good opportunity, you can write a tremendous opportunity. The next synonym for good is brilliant. For example, climbing to the summit of Mount Everest would be a brilliant experience. So instead of good experience, you can write brilliant experience. It would be absolutely wonderful. Wonderful is our next word instead of good. If human beings could learn to coexist without the need for conflict and war. Our next synonym for the word good is marvelous. Marvelous. For example, most of us would consider the internet to have been a marvelous development. It has changed our lives for the better. Our next synonym is amazing. Instead of good, you can write amazing. For example, the dedication and commitment of those working in accident and emergency units in hospitals is amazing. And our last synonym here for the word good is outstanding. Students who are academically outstanding are sometimes referred to as gifted. So these are, let's see, 6 synonyms that you can use instead of the word good. Now, our next word is bad. There are also some alternatives, around 6 or 7 alternatives that you can use instead of the word bad. The first one is catastrophic or calamitous. For example, unless we can reduce our dependence on oil, the consequences for all of us could be catastrophic or calamitous, right? Very good word, right? Our next word is awful or atrocious. Awful or atrocious. For example, those who migrate to large cities often have to endure awful or atrocious living conditions in shanty towns. Our next synonym for this word is detrimental. Detrimental. For example, even though it is widely known that smoking is detrimental to health, millions of nicotine addicts find it impossible to give up. Our next word is terrible or dreadful. Terrible or dreadful. For example, it would be absolutely terrible or dreadful if a terrorist organization managed to gain access to nuclear weapons. Our next synonym is disastrous or appalling instead of bad. Driving while under the influence of alcohol can have disastrous or appalling consequences, both for the driver, passengers, and other road users. Disastrous and appalling. Very good word, right? Instead of bad. And our last synonyms here are futile and pointless instead of bad. For example, some politicians believe that nothing can actually be done to reduce the crime rate and that attempting to sort it out is both futile and pointless. All right, very good. So instead of bad, you've learned what to use, what synonyms to use that would make your writing more academic. Now, in this part, I'm going to teach you some very good words that you can use instead of the word interesting. So the first synonym for interesting is fascinating. As far as I'm concerned, visiting art galleries and learning about different styles of painting is absolutely fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. Our next word is stimulating and inspiring. These two words are really good. I do really love them. I am myself love them. And if I want to use interesting in my writing, I would definitely use these two synonyms. For most undergraduates, sitting in a lecture being taught by a world-renowned expert is a stimulating and inspiring experience. So when you want to talk about an interesting experience, you can reuse these two synonyms: a stimulating and inspiring experience. And our last synonym for the word interesting is noteworthy. Noteworthy. It is noteworthy that during the first few years of the period being discussed, levels of petty crime fluctuated wildly. Another word that is widely used in task 2 writing is big. So here I'm going to teach you some very useful synonyms that you can use instead of the word big. Our first synonym for the word big is huge or colossal. Colossal. For example, between 1990 and 2000, there was a huge or colossal increase in the number of young adults looking for work. So huge or colossal. Our next word is major or substantial. For example, technology has had a major or substantial impact on almost every aspect of our lives. So you see, instead of big, we use major or substantial impact. Our next word is large. Large is not a basic word. For example, when we refer to large number of, a large number of young people have a sense of dissatisfaction with their lives. They feel that society has failed to meet their expectations. Our next synonym instead of big is enormous. For example, there is still an enormous gap between the incomes of the richest and poorest members of society. Our next word is massive. Massive. For example, we need to address the massive issue of illiteracy. In this day and age, it is not acceptable that so many human beings cannot read and write. And our last synonym for the word big is gigantic or vast or immense. Immense. Canada is a gigantic or vast country. Gigantic or vast country. It is only by traveling across it that one realizes how immense it is. So all these words that we learned today can be used instead of big, right? And it will definitely improve your band score. Now, instead of small, there are also a number of words and synonyms that we can use. The first one is tiny. 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 Only a tiny proportion of those surveyed admitted that they had never been abroad. A tiny proportion of. Our next word instead of small is insignificant. It is sometimes claimed that there has been a major shift in attitudes towards ethnic minorities. Unfortunately, in my experience, the change has been insignificant. So instead of small, you can use insignificant. And our next word is minor. For example, those convicted of minor offenses should, as far as I'm concerned, never be sent to prison. Minor offenses. All right, the verb think is one of those verbs that mostly used in writing. And today I'm going to teach you some synonyms instead of the word think. For example, the first one is are convinced or is convinced. For example, many leading experts are convinced instead of think that formal assessments do not provide an appropriate indication about a pupil's progress. The second synonym is consider. Most leading experts consider shorter school days to be beneficial for learners and teachers. Our next synonym for the word think is to fervently or wholeheartedly believe. For example, I fervently or wholeheartedly believe that the best way for a company to get loyal and committed staff is to treat its employees with dignity and respect. And our last synonym is to be of the opinion that. For example, some students are of the opinion that there is little or no point studying algebra. Are of the opinion that. Now, let's turn to our next word, a lot of. Instead of a lot of, we can use some very good synonyms. For example, the first one is a significant number of. A significant number of tourists spend their entire holiday on the beach and never bother to visit important cultural and historical sites. Our next synonym for the word a lot of is a huge proportion of. A huge proportion of university students claim to have too much work. The pressure they feel is often compounded by the fact that they have to work in order to pay their course fees and cover living expenses. Our next synonym is a sizable quantity of. Each year, a sizable quantity of food is thrown into landfill sites. This is the result of overproduction and an attempt by food manufacturers to keep prices as high as possible. And our last synonym for the word a lot of is a large amount of. Most of us spend a large amount of time daydreaming instead of getting on with our work. All right, and our last word here today is the word people. Most IELTS candidates, of course, use this word, and it is one of the most widely used words in your writing. You definitely refer to a group of people. You definitely want to talk about people. So today here, I'm going to teach you some words that you can use instead of people. So do not try to repeat the word people in your writing. The first word that you can use is individuals. Individuals. For example, the number of individuals renting flats rose steadily during the 1950s according to the figures given. So the first word is individuals. You can also write parents instead of people. For example, as parents, we need to take our responsibilities extremely seriously. Our next synonym for the word people is human beings. All human beings have a stake in the future of our planet. Our next word instead of people is citizens and also experts. The number of citizens who do not vote in general elections is on the rise. Experts believe this increase relates to voter apathy and a general sense of being unconnected to society. Our next synonym for the word people is the general public. The general public. The general public appears to have an attitude of healthy skepticism towards politicians. And our last synonym for the word people is members of the public. For example, members of the public who survive terrorist attacks often need extensive counseling. So as you can see, these words and phrases you can use in your writing in order not to repeat or not use basic words in your writing. In our next videos, I'll try to teach more of these words and vocabularies, and you will definitely be able to use them in your writing. And 100%, I'm pretty sure that if you use these words and synonyms in your writing and you avoid using basic words, you will definitely improve your band score in task 2 writing. So until next time, enjoy your time, stay tuned, and goodbye.